Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of Return Feed. We're back again with episode number 4 today, I believe, and going to talk about all sorts of things in terms of VDO.Ninja. We got lots of stuff to discuss, and if you have any questions along the way, whether you've used it before or you're thinking about using it, then do try to tag "Here's record" in those questions, and they'll come up on my screen even bigger here, so that will help me a lot along the way. So I first want to just introduce Ryan, who's sort of the co-host and very much doing a lot of the work here on the show. Ryan, hello.
Hello. Good afternoon for you. Yeah. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Good morning to you as well. Just a reminder, I like to bring this up because it's only fair to mention that Ryan has once again gotten up at a ridiculous time of the morning, which is 4 a.m. to actually, and he's not just a guest on the show. I'm basically just a guest on the show and just here to answer some questions and chat, but he's actually running the show from his end.
I'm just here
ATEM,
pressing companion
VDO,
buttons.
all
That's
this
what I
stuff.
do. Yeah.
That's more than I'm doing right now, so it's nice to have you here.
Pleasure to be here.
So the general idea of the show is we wanted to compare lots of different ways to contribute to remote productions. At first we looked at Zoom, and then we looked at SRT, and then today we really want to take a look at VDO.Ninja, which is over the last year or so something that I've been hearing more and more. It used to be called OBS.Ninja, I believe, and then they changed that name, which was probably a good choice. But we're just going to explore that today and get into it. And with that in mind, we have a guest on the show as well, which is Aaron Parecki. And nice to have you here as well, Aaron.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, excellent. Last time Aaron was on the channel here, we built his PK1 stand, and it was a lot of fun. I had a really good time building the extreme version. You have a new one since then, is that right?
Yeah, a new redesigned version of the small one. So now it matches the design of the large one because I made a couple of tweaks on that over the course of designing that and producing that. So now the small one matches the big one better, has more of the features like the clips and things like that.
Nice, that's really cool. We can chat about that later as well, which is nice. I've been using my extreme stand to hold up the ATEM Mini Extreme here at home, and it's been doing really well.
Excellent.
And I'm hearing loads of people constantly when it comes up anywhere of people looking for a stand. The PK series of stands seems to pop up. So I didn't mean to get to an advert so fast there, but it's nice to mention it because it's amazing. But we're talking about VDO.Ninja today specifically, and Aaron, I just wanted to kick things off and talk to you a little bit about if you've used this before, whether that be on the guest side or the producer side, because I know you make a bunch of live streams and stuff yourself. So is it something you've actually used before?
Yeah, I've used it a couple times in a few different productions now, most recently last week, in fact. And I've used it mainly as a way to, I like it as a way to bring in remote guests where it's very little fuss and it doesn't require that the guests have a lot of gear. I, of course, like the ATEM streaming into a streaming bridge for a nice, solid remote link also, but that requires that the guest has that gear and has the ability to use it and run it. And I don't want to require that when I'm bringing in guests, so it's a nice way to just join from a browser. If they have a good camera or an ATEM, you can join. You can use that as your webcam in the browser, and that works great too. Or if it's just a laptop camera, that will technically also work.
Yeah, exactly. And we're going to get into all of the details, the different aspects, and actually VDO.Ninja is something that I personally have only really tinkered with a little bit just to get used to and see what it was like a few weeks ago. It's not something that I've used much at all, not for any good reason. And having tested it with Ryan doing some test stuff and just chatting with Aaron today and many other people, I'm pretty excited about getting into it in the future and learning loads about it. But I totally got it way ahead of myself, and I just wanted to say hello to some of the fine folks out there watching along. And first of all, I wanted to thank Jeremy for becoming a member of the channel. Excellent. Nice to have you here as a member as well. And people coming in from all over the world, which always impresses me a lot. From India, Aaron here. Good to see you here from Portland as well. And Petra, always nice to have you watching along as well. And a big thanks for the super chat, really just to kick off the whole show there, just because you're so looking forward to this one. Exactly. Hello from Toronto, from Russia, from Greece as well, Sydney, which is, again, same same middle of the night, sort of middle of the morning time zone. So thanks for tuning in at a very antisocial hour, I would say, and Belgium as well. Excellent. Always nice to see people from all over the place coming in. And that's a reminder, actually, Ryan and Petra as well. 2 channels both hit 1K subscribers in the last week or so, which is really excellent. We've had Petra on the show a few weeks ago. We have Ryan running the show here today as well. So it's nice to see the community and all of us making these kind of videos and stuff like that growing over time. So excellent. Nice to have you here. Let me see if there's any questions coming in already. Mikael actually has a question here that says, we have Aaron with his AirPods sound. Is that right? Are you using your sound from your AirPods?
I hope not. You should be getting my my microphone up here. Tap, tap. Should be that one.
Yeah. Confirmed. Yeah. We can hear that. Yeah, cool. Just checking. And I believe that, I don't know if you have this button ready, Ryan, but you should fire the confetti now also. I see you have some confetti there, do you?
Woohoo!
Yeah, I'll be looking forward to seeing on the stream how well that compresses. Video's just falling apart here, which is pretty funny. It's not really used to that kind of stuff. And we'll just get to one more question. Does Aaron look like he has some more contrast? I think Ryan will let you talk through contrast things.
Yeah, so we were playing with that a little bit earlier, so it's probably a good point, a good opportunity to actually explain how I'm bringing them both in at the moment. So I obviously using VDO.Ninja. So basically the way that it works is it all runs in browser windows. So I'm using a scene, actually 2 scenes out, which is going into my laptop to my right over here. And that is outputting the 2 different scenes. So if I bring up this window here, so I'm using, so I have 2 scene links, which I won't show, but they're there, which I'm bringing into an Electron Capture window. And so basically that is the scene link with the password, which is not there, so we don't have anyone sneaking into the call. And then I'm outputting my audio with through embedded HDMI, and that is going to 2 different outputs on my laptop. And so the main thing with that is that you will get whatever display profile you get will do will come out that way as well. So originally I had only the Blackmagic device outputs enabled, but then I just ticked the box in Mac so that I can do a few different other ones. So I did do a bit of tweaking between the other ones, but it is still coming a little bit contrasty compared to normal. But I think moving forward, I'll just spend a bit more time and just trying to find the right one and actually getting an accurate output. That could also be VDO.Ninja that is doing a little bit of color and contrast shifting, but ultimately, yeah, just need to spend a bit more time and figure out, because this is the first time I actually use Electron Capture as an output. Normally I would use OBS or similar to bring in the browser window and then output that through a deck link or something like that. So, but this week I'm just using a laptop for both, just to show a free option. But yeah, also getting the audio out individually as well. So I'm mixing the audio separately, which is a bit fun as well.
Yeah, let's talk into that a bit later. I'd love to know, Aaron, what were you given to join this show today, and what has your experience been like as a contributor?
Yeah, this is actually my first time on the contributor side of VDO.Ninja, and normally I'm hosting other people. So they just sent me a link, like just a link in the calendar invite, just like I would join a Zoom meeting or whatever. I click it, it opens up a browser window, and then it asks me what camera to use for the to join. Just like joining any meeting using any meeting software, like nothing really special. And then on my end, as the guest, I see. Actually, I can show you what I see. I am seeing the other guests in the feed. Sorry for the tunnel vision. Now you can see the color contrast tweaking here. But this is what I'm seeing, and I can see John over here. I can see this is the program feed. This is actually Ryan, and then I'm up here, so I'm sending my computer screen in as a camera, and it's pretty minimal, right? I get like a little bit of status information up here, which most guests will ignore, and then the main controllers are down here. So choose the camera. I'm using the Blackmagic for audio. I'm using the ATEM for audio, video, and my AirPods are how I'm hearing them, so I don't pollute the sound in the room. I can mute myself in the stream. I can turn off my video. I can even share a screen. So overall, it's pretty much like a normal web interface to join stuff, and I like it because it isn't like throwing somebody into using the ATEM software control where you have to teach them stuff. It's mostly just we're all used to meetings, online meeting software now. So if you can join a meeting, you can join a VDO.Ninja stream.
Exactly, and I think that's one of the really interesting things about it. Whenever Ryan showed off the sort of the producer's side or the director's side of the equation, there's a lot more options in there. It does get pretty complex pretty fast. But seeing what you just saw there, you really want to just boil things down to only the features that the user should actually see and some buttons that they can make changes and stuff. I would say that it almost feels like this contributor side has been really carefully designed versus the other one, which is like lots of features and it's easier just to add those in where they kind of fit in. But this one is a little bit more boiled down in a strip of options, and that's all you should really play with as the contributor. But what you do find whenever you compare it to something like Zoom, and Ryan, you showed this off a little bit earlier, is you actually have some control over the what the user is sending you in terms of, or you can see what they're sending in terms of what devices they're using, and then you have some control over how to like mute them and unmute them and things like that, right?
Yeah, I do. So I'll jump back into, actually, let's go back here. So in the window down here, I can actually look at the audio and video settings for both guests. So Aaron, I can see is coming on the Blackmagic design, and I can see all of his audio options, for example.
Oh, that's weird. I didn't really think about that. You can see all of the webcams connected to my laptop or my computer.
I can. So I can see a 4K video of all the 100 different things. But one great feature with this is that if someone is coming in obviously on the wrong thing, or if they don't know about, or say that I want to use Aaron's AirPods, for example, I could actually click on this and request that. Obviously, it's not going to let you do anything without their permission, but then Aaron would actually get a request going, hey, I want to use this audio, and that would pop up as well. But even the interfaces, even the interface itself can actually be changed. So there's a lot of tags in terms of what the other people can see. So you can take out things, you can add things, so you can make it as simple as or as complex as you want, really, for the guest. Which is you can. There's so many different options in this, but anyway, we're only scratching the surface so far.
We're only starting to scratch the surface. And just to answer a question here from Julian, at Hit Record, and what do you see? And I see the exact same thing as Aaron. I'm joining this production as a contributor as well. So I've got the exact same experience as him. I've just joined the link that Ryan sent me, and I've just configured everything the same way as he did, and Ryan's doing all the work on his end. So the two of us, myself and Aaron, are just contributors, just guests to this production, and I don't have any control over any of the settings, other than I know what the URL that Ryan sent me was, so I think I can make a few changes to that if I knew what I was doing. But the average person would probably just click on the URL that was sent to them, type in the password, and they wouldn't really worry about fixing those things. So that's what I see, same as Aaron. And we have lots of questions coming in already, so I think it's worth just exploring some of them here. Here's one from Tom. Are John and Aaron both on VDO? Quite a difference quality-wise, which is quite interesting. Usually, because I can see what's coming back to me in the return feed. You have to say that at some point. And for once, my video quality is better than, I think, a little bit better than what's coming from Aaron in this case. But of course, whatever's happening on our networks is is affecting that in some way. So it could be maybe Aaron's got something running in the background, or maybe just the way that things worked out for the next few minutes, that the quality being sent on his side is not as good. But I mean, I can hear him and see him just fine, and I think that with basically all of these options, there's at some point something funky happens and qualities differ. But as long as you can keep that stable connection, then for a production that you're putting on, that's what really matters. But I believe there's some stuff that we can do, maybe not live right now, but Ryan, if you could tell us a bit about the quality for the whole production that you can set, or can you just set like send as much data as you can? We talked about that a little bit earlier, right?
Yeah, so that is one of the fun things about VDO.Ninja is that everything is unlocked. There's no limit to what you're doing. So the one massive upside but also downside to this is that there is no server. There's no internet. There's no cloud backbone of any sort in terms for the video side. Obviously, there's the website, which is hosted by a couple of their servers to actually show the window. But all of our video feeds are going peer-to-peer. So John's sending to Aaron, he's sending to me, and vice versa. We're all sending to each other. So the more that we do that, the more performance hit we're going to get all around. So if we look again at the window here, I've got a upload showing how much data rate I'm uploading from me to everyone else. So I'm sending to both John and Aaron, and so I'm sending a 4200, 4.4 meg or so. So, and
yeah,
I
mine
can
is
actually,
showing me 24 right now. I'm sending 24 megabits up according to this browser.
that's, yeah.
Oh, that's plenty.
Yeah. Give my internet a run for its money today.
Yeah, exactly.
And even in the room settings, I can adjust the quality of the room. So if I was to bring this down, everyone would see a lower quality all round from me, I think. Yeah, and I can also see how many people are on the link, how many people are listening, how many people are watching. Yeah, so it's a peer-to-peer thing. Everything's all happening there. But in terms of the quality, for this call, okay, so that's the other part, is that in each receive window, you can adjust what quality and codec that you're requesting from the user. So in my full screens of both John and Aaron, I've added a few tags. So Q equals 0 was one of them. So quality equals 0. So it will push up to 1080p 60 if it's available. And I've basically set the bit rate to 20 meg, which I think is what Aaron is actually sending at the moment. So basically you can set all these parameters of, cool, I want to unlock all these different things. And if the internet or if the link can do it, it'll do it. And I was playing before with John with different codecs. I saw someone ask if it's VP9. I believe it is VP9 we're using for both of them. But actually, I think I could also get... Here we go. So I actually also get a statistics for each person. So I've just gone and pressed Command click on the image, and now I'm actually getting a whole bunch of statistics from Aaron in terms of what codec we're receiving. So he's sending 360 to me just for my little preview window. But yeah, you can see a whole bunch of different things, what OS he's using. Like, there's a whole bunch of different information, which is quite cool in terms of what goes on there.
It's. I think we could do a whole series on this service alone. But I wanted to just backtrack a little and just. I think the two of you might know the origin story of this project a little bit better than I do. I know, Ryan, you might know it even better than that. But not the origin story, but like where this project has come from and why it's like able to be so feature rich, and it's very impressive how far it's come. And I know it's like a small team. So talk to me a bit about that.
Yeah. So
Well, I think...
Sorry, you go. Aaron.
Yeah, I was just gonna say we are using it in a way that it was not originally intended for. So the name of this project was OBS.Ninja, and the idea was that you would be able to have guests join your OBS project. So using OBS, you would use a web page capture, drop this URL into OBS's web page capture, and then you could mix in remote feeds. And that's not what we're doing because we're not streaming from OBS. We are streaming from an ATEM. So over the last year or so, this project's gone through a lot of iterations, and I think it's just mostly the one guy building it, which is cool. It's open source, so you can go and contribute to it as well. But the got renamed to VDO.Ninja, which is great because I think that's I don't think it was a good idea to have OBS in the name. And what we're doing now is outputting that web page out over HDMI. So and that's what I've done with my shows as well. Is grab the URL for a guest's view or a scene, and then I need that somehow out over HDMI. And there's a couple different options for doing that. So it's interesting to see the different sort of ways it's been repurposed now over the last year or year and a half or so, as a lot more people are finding out about it and using it.
And Ryan,
and
did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I actually found it from one of your streams, Aaron. Someone in the chat brought it up, and I was like, I need to look into this. But it's basically made by one guy, Steve Seguin in Canada, I believe, and he is constantly adding updates to this, almost on a daily basis. So there's a Discord channel for VDO.Ninja, and it's constantly got people talking and things. But yeah, he's always adding updates, always adding new features, and he's super responsive as well. So if you've got a question or a bug that you've noticed, for the most part, he's gone and fixed it for me almost straight away. So, and even at stupid times of the night. So he definitely needs to sleep a bit more. But I'm not sure if he's here in the chat or not. But yeah,
I've been in the Discord a little bit of VDO.Ninja, but I've also been on the YouTube channel. I'm not sure exactly what it's called. Maybe it's called VDO.Ninja. And he makes some really great videos too. And I really like his style of video production. It's just like he's in no rush to tell you anything. He just takes his time and just shows you features. I love it. I love watching his videos, even if I'm not going to use the features. I just watch them because he's just in no rush, and he makes everything seem so easy and straightforward. So I really like it. Questions coming in here. Lots of discussion about the contrast image, but I think we're pretty confident about the it being the HDMI out profile based on a few things that have been shown. For example, whenever you showed your screen, Ryan, you could see a different quality than what is in the Superstore style thing. So I think we can move on from that.
Yeah, I know people are commenting about it being the ATEM also, and I am using the ATEM's USB output, which I don't use for my show. So this, compared to what you see on my live streams, is going to be a little bit more contrasty. But that said, there's another layer of it happening too. So like when I'm looking at my computer screen here, I'm seeing the USB output of the ATEM as my monitoring myself, and yeah, it's like a little bit more contrasty than my ATEM's multi-view. But the version of myself that I'm seeing in this program view is like another level of contrast. So it's definitely on the HDMI output, not just the ATEM's USB.
Even looking here, in my director's preview, it's the same feed, but the contrast is a lot lower there than on the super source that we're seeing there. So it's definitely something coming out of my computer into the switcher.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, you know, on a normal, like if in a paid production, let's say, we would fix this kind of stuff. But especially when we look back to the Zoom show where things, you know, went off the rails a little and then went back on the rails very successfully. I am perfectly fine with these things being this way, because what you get to see is the rails side by side, and you get to see what it looks like, and you get to see why it's worth really spending time to fix these kind of things before you do a production. I mean, it doesn't bother me for this live stream at all. We're talking about this as a service, and any mistakes we bring up, for example, we already know that the password to this video call has been shown during this stream. So that's something to be super careful of and not show. I know that we already talked about this in the pre-production, that we wouldn't mind if we showed it, and that we'd be careful not to include anybody in the show that we didn't want to be in the show. But all these things add up to be a list of reasons to test this stuff out and to be careful about links. And it's the same as sharing a stream key of your YouTube channel or all that stuff. Just being careful and knowing what the tool does and how to use it is super important, definitely. And is anybody, Ryan, speaking of that, since we showed the password, has anybody popped in the waiting room?
No one's popped into the waiting room yet, but
Okay.
it's actually an interesting point. So the way that I've set this up is I've got different scenes. So if someone was to jump into the waiting room, they wouldn't go to air. They would only go to air if I was to add them to the scenes themselves. So I can actually show off what's going on there. So right now I've got John going to scene 1 and Aaron going to scene 2. So if I was to remove Aaron, so now he is gone from that window, and I can add him again, or I can even add him to the top to here, and we can actually have 2 people in one. So and there's even a little animation on there as well, which is crazy how this is all happening in
That's really nice. Yeah.
in a browser window. But yeah, and we'll show a bit later on in terms of screen sharing as well, because that doesn't do the usual Zoom thing of breaking everything, going full screen and doing all this stuff. It gets a lot more fun, actually. So stay tuned for that.
Stay tuned for that. There's plenty more to come after this ad break. No, there's not really an ad break. So the questions are coming in faster than I can manage them, which is always excellent. I did show a question there from Jonas asking, are you using a turn server, Ryan? Question mark.
Not intentionally, no. I haven't set anything up, so I've just literally done everything.
This is the one piece of the infrastructure that Steve runs as a generous donation to the community, which is the turn server for Discovery. So no video feeds are running through any of his equipment, but he is running a server that does the peer-to-peer linking of all the guests. So it is tied to that, and I think you can replace it somehow, or I think if you're running your own copy of VDO.Ninja on your own website, I think you can replace it with something, but when you're using the actual VDO.Ninja, you're using his infrastructure for that step. Yeah,
I'm under that. I believe that as well, that if you host it yourself, you can take that burden off his side, so you're not abusing the great work and the nice community work that he's doing, definitely. And I think that would be totally fair. In fact, that is a good point. You can just, like you said, it's open source, and you can just grab the code and host it yourself, and that's probably more encouraged than the other side of that, which is what we're talking about now. Okay, more questions. Let me just fire through a few more. I'll come back to that later. Oh yes, Go Web Technologies. We talked about Electron Capture earlier, and I guess Ryan first. I want you to talk about what. No, actually, Aaron first. Tell me about the ways that you would capture a guest, and then Ryan, you can tell me about what Electron Capture is and how that's maybe better or not.
Yeah, so when I've used this before, the most recent one I did last week was I had a dedicated laptop that's running VDO.Ninja. That's where the control room was, and that's where I was bringing in the guest and his screen share as well. And then that laptop had 2 HDMI outs from it. So I had 2 dongles out of that laptop. It was the 16-inch MacBook Pro. And then the laptop sees 2 external monitors. Both of those HDMI outs go into the ATEM. So basically I can send 2 separate windows from the laptop into the ATEM. And then I take Chrome, I take the browser, load up each scene in a different Chrome window, move those into each external monitor, and full screen them. So that it's essentially just a full screen Chrome window going one on each separate monitor. And that worked great. No problems. I had no complaints with that workflow at all. The other way I've done this is using a Raspberry Pi. And I've set up a Raspberry Pi to work in kiosk mode. There's essentially a way to have it boot up just enough of the X Windows system to launch Chromium. And there's a bunch of flags you can pass to Chromium to disable navigation bars and most things that you don't need. And it just will load a URL when it boots up, which is super convenient. So I have, my sort of more or less stable VDO.Ninja link, which I can drop into that Raspberry Pi's config, plug it in, turn it on, it just boots up. No interaction needed. No keyboard, no mouse. So that works. I like that aspect of it. However, it was a Raspberry Pi 4, so it's top of the line Raspberry Pi. I definitely was seeing some screen tearing in the image, so it was not totally smooth. And what I mean by that is like the top half will kind of shift over sometimes, or it'll update the top half and not the bottom half for a frame or something. And it's like it wasn't terrible. It was mostly watchable, and the audio was fine, so you don't hear any glitches. But I was not happy about it. So that's why last week I went with the MacBook instead, and that worked a lot better performance for the video. So it'd be nice to find a way to get some sort of small Raspberry Pi-like device that has a much better graphics card. But yeah, those are the two ways I've done it.
Excellent. And then what brings us from there is the Electron Capture that you mentioned earlier, Ryan. And what is that?
Yeah, so Electron Capture is, excuse me, it's a bit of software made from Steve as well. So he made it originally because the browser input on OBS wasn't the greatest. So he made it as an option for bringing that browser input, and then you can go just full screen on an app. So typically when I'm doing this, so I've used this on a couple of larger gigs, and what I have done before is gone into OBS on different instances. So and then I actually have two of them. So I've had two PCs with Decklink Duo cards out. So I have 4 feeds on each computer. And then I have each of those computers on different internet sources. So one on fiber, one on 4G, for example. And then I would have each of those scenes. So scene 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually on both. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that when I bring in a guest, if I click them on one of the scenes, they are now sending to both of those computers on both different internet connections. So if they went down, we would know that it's something to do with them, not to do with us. And then out of OBS, I would do a output to, what do you call it? So yeah, once we're in OBS, I would just do it output to my Decklink card. So similar to what I'm doing here for the window for HDR graphics, but yeah, I just go output via that, and I'll just have four instances of that open. But yeah, so for me, that's one of the things I love about it, is that because it's peer-to-peer, there's no server that can die. And I have actually had the GUI, there was an update being done on the server end. So the GUI did go down, but all the video feeds were still working because the connection was open. So even if the servers do die mid-show, the show will go on. So, which is different to things like Zoom, which would, if Zoom went down, Zoom went down. So that is an interesting part of that. But yeah, so typically either it's a HDMI out using Electron Capture, which I'm doing now, or I'm using a OBS using the video output of the Decklink output, basically, to get SDI out.
Yeah, and speaking of that, while you're there, Ryan, just take us through the gear in general. I wanted to highlight that earlier, but I totally forgot. What kind of gear are you using on your end?
Yes, so I am using, let's bring up the H2R gear plan. Not a plug, is a plug, yes. So this is my portable rack. So I've got a video on my channel explaining how I built this and bits and pieces. So a little bit all over the place, but basically what I'm doing is I've got my MacBook Pro up here, which is outputting Thunderbolt to HDMI. It is actually going through an adapter. Yeah, so this is basically the path. So I've got my MacBook, which is going into a Thunderbolt to HDMI cable. Out of that, it's going into a HDMI audio stripper. So that's basically taking analog audio from the HDMI feed, and that's going into my mixer and also going into my ATEM Extreme. So my camera's number 1 there, and camera's number 1. And then I've got 2 and 4, just because of how it's being patched in, is how I'm receiving their feeds at the moment. So one fun thing about doing it that way is that I'm seeing audio both on my console. So I'm seeing the audio for... Actually, I probably should talk through this as well. So the audio is coming in through my switcher. So I've got a Behringer Air XR16. So here's my mic. Then I got VDO.1, which is John's coming in mono. And then Aaron's coming in stereo just because of running out of channels. I also have my director's audio coming in on a separate line. So I'm sending the audio and video feeds to Aaron and John via the computer I'm on at the moment, and my laptop is doing the video feeds out. So there's actually an extra connection going on there. So I can hear them through my... Yeah, so I'm currently listening to their ISO feeds. So this is my speaker output, which is my headphones. So I'm listening to their feeds to make sure that everything's working. And you are also hearing the same thing. So this is the mix that you guys are hearing, as in on YouTube. And so you're hearing that, but I could have them coming in as mixed, but I've got them coming in individually, so I can actually bump different levels between people. But the fun thing about doing a de-embed on the HDMI is that if I was to do an ISO record, for example, I would actually get each person's audio coming in on the HDMI as well. So, which could be handy if you're doing a pre-record with a bunch of guests and you want to do a mix live, but also you want to have each individual feed with audio as well. So that is a little bit fun.
So I have a question about that, because that seems very complicated to be splitting out the audio and recombining it again. And why do you do that? And why not just use the audio out over HDMI and mix it in the ATEM? Because that's how I've been doing it all the time, and I don't have an audio mixer here. I just get the HDMI has the video and audio in it. I mix in the ATEM. Seems very straightforward.
Yeah, 100%. Yes, you can totally do it that way, but there are a few things having the console which is actually giving me a few little hacks, which does make life a little bit easier. So one, for example, is... I'll bring this full screen again so we can all see. So on my main left right, I'm sending each of these mics. So my mic is going to a vocal effects. So I'm using this effects bus for my delay. So you can see that the input and the output is coming in separately. So I'm adding a couple of milliseconds delay just to sync my audio and video together. And John's coming in on this one and Aaron's coming on this one. So I can actually adjust people's delay separately on that. But what's more fun is that when we're playing a video, when I fire a companion trigger, these are the direct outs going to the world. So if I was to press mute on this, you guys on YouTube will not hear us. So when we're in the pre-show, so when the countdown was happening, for example, these were all muted, so we could still communicate and chat to each other, still hear the music to make sure it's still working. And even so, to VDO, for example, I had the music quite low on -30, so everyone can still hear that it's happening, but we can still talk quite easily. So everyone gets their own mix, everyone can hear what they want to hear. There's multiple different ways of doing that. But for me, it's a bit of a... It does make it a little bit more complicated, but also gives me so much more flexibility in terms of how I can do things, because I can give people mixes that they want. I can see and hear things. So another part too is that if I was to be listening to the ATEM feed, for example, I would hear a little bit of delay. There is delay in the ATEM itself. But what I'm actually listening to is I'm listening to my microphone, because I like having the feedback just to hear what's happening on the mic. But I'm hearing that with zero latency, so I can listen to this all day, no problem whatsoever. And typically when I'm doing a stream, I'll have headphones in as well, just as a confidence to know that nothing's going to air that shouldn't be. So it means that I can listen to the feed without that latency and, know what's going to the world, and you guys can hear that as well. So that's pretty much, the main reasons why I'm using that.
It's a good answer. In fact, I've thrown a poll into the chat here. How do you mix your live audio? And so far, 57% have an audio console / mixer, as opposed to using the ATEM audio mixer. Although so far I've been on Aaron's side for, well, what I'm doing here in the house is not more complex than just using the ATEM. But as soon as I step out of the house and do any sort of gig, I really take full advantage of a console of some sort. So I kind of see the difference between the two places as necessary and not so necessary. And speaking of polls, I did ask one at the start as well. Have you used VDO.Ninja in a live video production? 46% said no, I have not. But then the rest, the majority, either voted for yes, I have, or I plan to use it. So I'm interested to hear if anybody's planning to use it on any gigs coming up soon, and what kind of features you're using it for over other options, for sure. But yeah, interesting. I would have thought, I'm always surprised by poll answers. I would have thought more people would have just used this in their productions, but it's quite interesting to see 31% of people planning to use it at some point. So that's pretty good. More questions coming in. I think we answered that one for sure. Let's see.
Yeah, the chat's
Oh
coming.
yeah, this is a good one from Jeremy here. Is there a hard max for participant number, for the participant numbers?
I believe the answer is no, but your computer will probably say otherwise. So
well, there's no like artificial limit, but there's practical limits. It's because remember it's peer to peer, so every person is sending video to every other person in every combination, and it is sending like a super tiny version to your other peers. It's not sending the full like 20 megabit like I'm sending to the Ryan's program viewer, but still it is increasing every time you're adding a participant. You're adding the number of combinations of feeds that are sent. So there is just a practical limit of how many people can be in there, and have it actually not make the browser crumble.
But what
Precisely.
you can do to help that though is you can set up in broadcast mode. So that's one of the tags that you can do. So that would mean that everyone would be receiving just the director's feed, and then the director can pick the feeds that they look at. So that would mean that everyone would have a connection to each other, so they'll hear each other audio-wise, but all the video would only go one source. So if you had... So I think the theoretical, like the recommended limit is about 20, if you all have decent machines and decent internet connections. But you would probably run that in broadcast mode, so that you would have the feed from the director coming out to the guests, and then the director would only pull what they want. And there is a tag as well. I can't remember what it is, but it actually, when you're sending to someone that's not receiving the image, it will kind of turn off that connection. So only turn on the connections as it's being used. But I can't for the life of me remember what that was. We spent a lot of time trying to find that for another recent gig. But yeah.
Yeah, and I posted a video. Actually, I posted the wrong video. I'm posting another one here in the chat that Steve posted recently. The title of that being using Meshcast, which was another service, I believe, to host even larger rooms. And he has a couple of great videos on the channel about... the other one I posted accidentally, which is still a good one, is pushing VDO.Ninja group room until it breaks. So he's been stress testing it for sure. And like you mentioned earlier, Ryan, if there's any questions that come up about video, you can of course ask in the I'm Here to Record Discord, but it might be even better to ask over on the VDO.Ninja Discord. You can just join that via the website, I believe. I think that's where I found it anyway. There's a link on there.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, cool. More questions. Here's one. Julian says, you must use vmix/obs/wirecast ? You can't send it to the ATEM Mini Extreme. No. You must need a computer arm bracket here to record. Yeah, I've used... I don't really use OBS much, but I certainly have used vMix a lot. And for that, you can have calls as part of the production just fine. But... once you want to get the ATEM Mini Extreme or ATEMs involved in those sort of services, that's kind of the baseline for this whole production was we wanted to use the ATEM and we wanted to show how to use these services with the ATEM, and that's why you have all that equipment on your end, Ryan, and that's why we're really testing this stuff out. So yeah, it does get more complicated when you take a software-based switcher like vMix or Wirecast, and then you want to leave that and go to hardware for some reason. And I would say if you're going to do that, you have to have a very good reason to want to go that direction round, I think. But I guess neither of you use any of those much at all. I know you use OBS a lot for sort of some glue, maybe, but or Aaron, do you use any of those three for any purposes in your day-to-days?
I think I have touched vMix exactly once, uh, like ever. But I do use OBS in my show right now, but only as a way to capture the graphics for my live stream. So I have the graphics for my show is in a web page now, and I have that pulled up in a browser capture in OBS, and it outputs over SDI out of my computer using the deck link or the Ultra Studio. That's my use of OBS. It's really just as a browser to video converter, and uh, everything I do otherwise in the ATEM for all the video processing.
And yeah, I'm the
And same for
same.
you, Ryan.
I've
Yeah.
only touched it. Yeah, I think I've only opened vMix once or twice. But yeah, basically, I just use OBS for my graphics overlays to send into my ATEM. But yeah, I mean, maybe if we do another season of this and play with the software, I might be converted. Who knows?
Who knows?
There is a
exactly,
lot
yeah.
of there's a lot of power in the cloud, and I do want to try it. So yeah, but not today, not yet.
Yeah, I'm excited to head down that route. I've been using vMix the last few years, much more than all of the other options for sure. So I've learned a lot about that. And OBS I've barely used. In the early days when I started streaming in conferences, I used Wirecast a lot until I think I've mentioned it before, but it was running on a laptop with several capture cards coming into it, and the battery was draining faster than the show was happening, and I got very nervous as the show went on, and there's no real coming back from that if you can't trust. I mean, obviously the software was doing a lot of work. My computer, the MacBook Pro that I had, was possibly not optimized for that piece of work, but just as soon as you see something like that happen, you never want to use that again for anything. And I think I switched to hardware, and ATEM's pretty fast after that. I didn't really look back much.
Speaking of that, actually, that's a good point. I when I was setting up the show last week using the MacBook Pro 16-inch for the outputting these two browser windows from VDO.Ninja. So I had two external monitors plugged in, effectively external monitors, right? They're going to the ATEM. And the MacBook Pro 16 needs the huge power supply from Apple. It's like the 96 watts, otherwise it does not charge. And it's very happy to tell you that the battery is not charging. And what I found was that when I had that plugged in, I had the correct power supply plugged directly into the Mac, not through the dongle I was using. The battery was still going down with the two windows going. And the battery was draining throughout my tests. And that was plugged into the left side. And then I switched it before the show to plug it into the right side of the computer, and it was able to keep the charge up. So something funny is going on in there with their charging wiring. But at least I was able to fix that, because I was not looking forward to having to keep my eye on the battery and just watch it trickle down even though it was plugged in. So another reason to maybe not use a laptop for that, and if instead I had used a Mac Mini that's on wall power where there is no battery, there would be no problem.
Actually,
Funny,
yeah,
I remember
my laptop and the battery
an article
is
about that once.
draining.
It's training, exactly. I remember reading an article about that once about I can't remember what the title was, but you've got your power plugged into the wrong port on a MacBook. That was the title, something along those lines. And it's basically like you have to put it. It doesn't mark it anywhere. It doesn't tell you which one, but there is a right one. And in your case, aren't you plugged it into the wrong side, basically? But if it's gonna be like that, then just tell us, and you wouldn't have these sort of weird situations. Yeah, I think we got nicely caught up on questions. We don't have that much time. Time really passed by because there's so much to talk about, and there is still so much to talk about on this. Like I said, we could probably talk for another week about it. A couple of the cool little features, I just wanted to touch on those real quickly. One that I looked into a while ago, I can't really show it right now because we didn't set up for it, but it has VDO.Ninja has a feature where you can set up like a caller list almost, give people a link and they can call in to that link. You can double check that their audio, video looks good, and then you can pass them off to the real show. And Ryan, you mentioned a little bit earlier on that you could use it as sort of a green room experience, right?
Yeah, 100%. So I've done this before. So I had so when I sent them a link, so similar to a Zoom link, you just send them a link with the credentials. So we had a green room set up. So we had someone on the laptop. We just had them bringing in guests, getting their cameras all set up and doing all that kind of stuff. And then there's a transfer button. So if you had so this is the room name, for example, so return feed Ep.4. if I had a main stage room, for example, then I could just bounce them to the room without them having to change links or anything like that. So you can actually move people around wherever you want, which I find is
Very
an
cool.
awesome system, so that you can actually, yeah, move people around and have all that fun stuff.
Yeah, I really like that. I could see myself using that plenty actually. Messing with Zoom in the past, and you're giving people new links and doing weird things like that. So that's a perfect feature for sure. Aaron, was there any neat little features that you wanted to just go through?
I was impressed with the screen sharing feature. I think that was one of the reasons I ended up using this for the show last week, was because the guests can screen share, and again, it's just like any other meeting software. Really, there's nothing special to do, and you can the screen shows up just like another participant. So it shows up in that view in the back end, and you can add the screen to a scene. You can add the person and their screen to the same scene, or you can separate it out like I did, so that I had two separate pictures coming in on the ATEM that I could mix that way. Super cool. I like that.
Yeah, really nice. And the Raspberry Pi stuff you mentioned earlier as well, which is pretty cool
Hmm.
to see, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm still wanting to find a better solution for that, because the Raspberry Pi does have that sort of screen tearing issue. And yes, I did try with the special flags that enable like graphics acceleration in Chromium and all that stuff. I read all the tips
Mm.
for it, and it was an improvement over the defaults, but it was still not really acceptable in my opinion. So I'm hoping I can find some sort of other single board computer that's tiny and has no fan to be able to use that. Because what I did like about that setup is that you can set it up so that it starts that web page on boot, so that you just power the thing up and there's no buttons to press, there's no fiddling, it just launches the browser and the scene is ready to go, and you can start adding people to it from the back end of VDO.Ninja. So I like that part of it, of that setup, compared to fiddling with laptops and plugging in external monitors and all that kind of stuff. But I do need a better computer for it.
Actually, I think Steve put a video up comparing different single board computers. So one of them being the
Mm.
Jetson Nano, I think, is a little bit more powerful. And I think that works a
Mm-hmm.
little bit better in terms of, yeah, getting that feed out as a. But yeah, having a headless receiver would be amazing.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It would be. And I mean, I still feel like it's kind of early-ish days for these kind of tools. I'm really excited to see what kind of features he adds over time as well to VDO.Ninja, and him working so fast on it. It's really impressive to see a project like this grow a lot. In fact, there was a question much earlier today. JHB wanted to know, what's the difference between using VDO.Ninja versus something like StreamYard? Easier, pluses, minuses? Thanks. Aaron, I believe you used StreamYard in the past. Is that right?
I've used StreamYard quite a bit too. They are very, very different. So StreamYard is more of a all-in-one, I'm going to run the entire show from StreamYard kind of tool. So it is great for that, and it is super easy to use both on the host side and on the guest side. So on the guest side, it's about the same, I would say, as VDO.Ninja, where you just click a link, choose your webcam, you can screen share. That stuff's about the same in both. But on the host side, it's completely different. So StreamYard, you actually do mix the show from StreamYard, and StreamYard is going to be streaming to something. So I've streamed directly from StreamYard to YouTube. I've also streamed back to my studio into a Raspberry Pi. But in that case, in those cases, StreamYard is expecting to be the one that's doing all of the mixing. So you have your multiple guests, you can add them to the scene, you can choose the layouts. All that's done in StreamYard, and then it sends you the one feedback out. Where VDO.Ninja is completely the opposite, where you can have multiple scenes. You can add one person to each scene, which is how we're doing this show, where I'm going out one video output, John's in the other video output, and what that means is that we get, there is no like program feed in VDO.Ninja. That concept doesn't exist. It is we're sending the sort of raw feeds from each guest out of a video port into Ryan's switcher, so that he mixes the show like he normally would with in-person camera feeds. So it's really a difference between, are you mixing your show locally in your studio using your studio tools, or are you mixing it sort of in the cloud using and deferring all of the work to just
Exactly right. I got super distracted there. There's a new kitten in my house, and it was playing with something. But it was you're absolutely right. They're different tools, but useful for different jobs. I was yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. Um, Still more questions coming in, which is really excellent. Um, oh, here's one. Gert says you should invite Steve as a guest so you can bombard him with questions. That is a good idea.
Yeah.
Me and Ryan did talk about sort of like when we talked about adding VDO.Ninja on here, we could reach out and Steve might have been up for coming on, but I was keen just to talk about it openly. We didn't really have anything bad to say about it or rough to say about it, but I thought it'd be easier just to have a chat about it without Steve being right there. But I'd be more than happy to have Steve on in the future, and people can ask all the questions and ask for all the features that they want for sure. That's an excellent idea, I think. L has a question here, a little bit off topic. Any possibilities of a tiny house tour? Would love to see the house on the land. Yeah, something I am working on. The house is never tidy enough to actually shoot a video, so someday we'll tidy up and then I'll make some sort of video. Go Web Technologies. Can we capture the browser window via Raspberry Pi? Aaron, you touched on that a little bit earlier, but just as a reminder,
Yeah.
can we?
Yeah, that's what I've done that before, and again, it does have some performance issues, but basically you need to boot if you look for tutorials on turning the Raspberry Pi into like a browser kiosk mode, that's what you would do. So you would set it up to launch Chrome on boot, and then you give it the URL of your VDO.Ninja scene, and it'll just launch that full screen on one of the HDMI ports. So it does work, but it might work well enough for like a screen share capture rather than like a video of a person, because the motion glitches may not be as obvious on the
Which is
screen
a
share.
perfect segue to that next question there. Would it be a good idea to use the Raspberry Pi per guest to go HDMI out to the ATEM? And I think you just touched on that. It's like maybe at this point it's more of a screen share than it is like the best quality guest. Although who knows in
It's
time?
very
But for
close.
now,
It is very
it's
close.
close.
I'm just being
Exactly.
extra critical of the video feed. So
Exactly. Ryan, is that something you would consider have tried for this? Because you have a couple of pies lying around, right?
Yeah, I haven't actually tried it yet. I do want to try it, but yeah, for me, it's the performance. I just want to get the best performance and frame rate going into the switcher as much as possible. Was that one of you guys doing a screen share, or was that someone else screen sharing before?
That was somebody else. Yeah.
There you go. Someone made it in.
I got really confused. That distracted me too, and I thought you were going to. Yeah, on our end, we can see if somebody joined, like you talked about earlier, Ryan, and another video feed just popped up, and it was a screen share of, I think it was Aaron's YouTube channel that I saw. I was thinking, this is where is this conversation going? But yeah, that was funny. It didn't make its way out to the production, which is a good safety feature for sure. Yeah, I wanted to just take a quick second to thank. I always like to thank the supreme supporters here on the YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and keeping the channel alive for sure. Cloud Bedrock, Jim there, Patrick, Tech Condo as well, Petra, and Jai Reese. I appreciate it an awful lot. And nice to have your support here on the channel. And thanks to Petra as well for the super chat earlier in the stream. Aaron, where can people find you and what kind of stuff can they watch on your channel?
yeah, find me on YouTube, youtube.com/AaronPK, or my website's aaronpk.tv. I do live weekly shows, Q&A about live streaming and this kind of stuff. Got a lot of tutorials on the ATEM series things. I've got some more of those coming out soon as well. So you can find me there. Find the stands. You can go get a stand at pk1.tv. Get your own name on the faceplate too.
Yeah, I felt so special when I had an I'm here to record custom faceplate, but you know, the feeling has slightly disappeared now that you get some cool red ones.
Now that everybody can get one.
You're gonna have to upgrade me to a red one. I'm gonna have to get a special order for that one. But it looks really good. Nice work. And there is a link below this to your channel in the description, and there's also a link to Ryan's channel as well. But Ryan, remind us, what kind of stuff do you talk about on your channel?
Yeah, so I like to dive into different tips and tricks. So I work on larger streams and smaller streams. So I like to try and grab tips from the larger streams and figure out how that can be used in smaller events as well. So a bunch of different tips and tricks. I've done videos recently on like mix minus and bits and pieces like that. So yeah, definitely check them out, and would love to have you on board. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, good idea. And next week we will do another episode of Return Feed, the last sort of main episode of this series, and then we're going to have Alex, who was on the channel a few weeks ago, in a panel. We're going to talk about the ATEM Streaming Bridge. We will definitely see how that goes. We're having some interesting challenges going from here in Europe all the way over to Australia with the ATEM to Streaming Bridge connection. So tune in for that and see if we manage to pull it off or not. We'll find out next Monday for sure. And yeah, thanks for sticking around. Thanks to Aaron and Ryan for being here and chatting about this fun stuff. And we'll see you in the next episode. Bye bye.
See you later. Bye.